Welcome back. I'm Barry Craig. My guest today is one of Old Paducah Community College's best and brightest. He's a 2000 graduate of our school, went on to get a bachelor's degree at Murray State and an EDD. He is Craig Carter, the UniServ director for the Kentucky Education Association based in Paducah. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, since education is our game, both of us, let's begin. In your opinion, as the UniServ director of KEA in Paducah, what do you see is the biggest issue in public education today?
Basically, dealing with all 17 school districts in 1st District in Western Kentucky, you see a big push and a big change in accountability. It's the talk, not only within our 17 school districts, but the Commonwealth in general. One of the main problems and concerns is the push of new standards out. When we look back
well, define accountability exactly in terms of education. What does that mean?
Probably the general public wouldn't really realize, but it's not just accountability that we see with holding students, as it has been in the past, where they are academically, but also a push to look at accountability as far as teacher effectiveness and how they're meeting the needs of each and all of their students that they teach.
How do you do that?
One of the things that's come out, as we all remember quite well, even though I was a student of KERA, the Kentucky Education Reform Act, in 1989 and 90, we see a push of that accountability system kind of out of the way right now. And as you know, a new accountability system needing to take place with what we call Senate Bill 1. Which is a big push from not only our Commissioner of Education and Legislature, but looking at a total different way of how we assess students in the state of Kentucky, but looking at assessing teachers as well with teacher effectiveness. And you said, how do we do that? Well, we're looking at, the legislature is, and it's facing all of our educators, a new way of how they're going to be evaluated and coming up with a new teacher evaluation system in Kentucky. So it's quite interesting. Even though that's not in its final form yet, we have actually teachers and KEA members who are sitting on that advisory council and I guess I should say effectiveness committee for the Commissioner of Ed and looking at how our teachers are going to be evaluated. And that's something that, we hold dear to our hearts because we don't want a system that would be flawed, that would be impossible to be measured.
Well, what are some of the ideas of how you evaluate teachers that they're looking at?
Some of the things that are being tossed around right now is adding a component called value added. And value added sounds very mathematical.
Value added tax.
Exactly,
about, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's actually holding teachers accountable for their students' test scores. And KEA, we are making sure that we are well represented on there and that our teachers and our members have a voice on that committee because some of the talk has come from, the federal government as well and looking at how teachers are to be assessed, and they really want to try to push to hold teachers accountable for their students' end of the year standardized test scores.
I'm familiar with this, being married to a 32-year teaching veteran and KEA member. Mm-hmm. But what I'm not hearing through any of this is student responsibility, parent responsibility. Is that being addressed at all?
Right now, the real push is just focusing, like I said, on the teacher effectiveness, but you don't see a lot of the push back around for the accountability for the students' test scores. Although, it's of great importance, it goes back to really preparing for teachers to be highly effective within the classroom. And KEA, we think that we should have the very best teachers within the classroom. But also, there's a lot of research out there, as you know, that shows that it's sometimes highly impossible to move a student from a whole year's progress, or even some talk has been around a whole year and a half progress. To put that in easier terms, it would be like having a 4th grade student, which I used to teach 4th grade, on the 4th grade level. And as a teacher, inheriting them from the very beginning of the school year and having to push them a whole year or perhaps a year and a half's progress. That would be to 5th or 6th grade level when they're right on the 4th grade level. That also means taking special needs or special education students and moving them a whole year's progress. Or perhaps a gifted and talented student, maybe a 4th grader, but already on a 6th grade level, but still having to move them to a 7th grade level. So research shows that, you know, that's also highly impossible, although you should be moving them toward progress. So there's a lot of talk and on this whole committee whether or not that value added component should be added. You know, it goes back to what you said, where is the accountability of where the student should be moving and hold a responsibility to move that year's progress, as well as the parents playing an important role in their child's education, playing a role within the community, within the school to want the very best for their child. So you can see where there's all these components floating out there, and fortunately this is in all this Senate Bill 1 new Reform Act, but the sad part is there's not really the money there from the federal standpoint to get it, as well as within legislation to go ahead and move it to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. About parent involvement, I've observed that you get a good turnout usually of parents in the elementary school. It begins to fall off somewhat in middle school, and when you have parent nights at the high school, oftentimes teachers end up talking to one another. Why is that drop off, do you think, from the elementary through the middle school to the high school in parent involvement?
That's a good question. I think you're absolutely correct. You know, being a former elementary ed teacher, a national board teacher, I'll tell you, you know, elementary always parent involvement. You know, I think there's a lot of, you know, that get-go, the parents know their child's leaving them from the home setting and going into school, so they're there. But at middle school and high school, it really does struggle. And I hear from the members all the time where they have a hard time, you know, bringing parents in to, just like you said, whether it be meetings or, you know, I had a middle school teacher tell me last night who was coming to one of the local board meetings, said that they had just been wrapping up parent-teacher conferences and talked about the low turnout. You know, I think the one reason, the way the economy is and people working all the time, but as you said, there used to be more of a concern, and you know, that's something that KEA, we talk to our members, and parent involvement is so important, especially to know what's going on with your child's education academically. You know, when we look at the new reforms coming about, you know, it's such an important aspect for parents to take a role in their child's education. You know, especially like you said, the push in secondary education. You know, we're looking at, in the state of Kentucky, preparing all high school students as next generation learners to be college, career ready, to be ready to go into either a community college setting or you know, a tech trade or college, four-year university. So some of the very best and brightest students you'll always notice, and there's a component of parent involvement with them to prepare them and to get them ready for college, but unfortunately that's lacking. So many of our educators are working hard doing home visits.
Right.
Which is a new push.
Are they effective, do you think?
I think they can be, especially, but it depends on demographics and school districts. You know, in First District, we have a lot of city and independent school districts versus county school districts, especially in a lot of the city, you know, Paducah Independent primarily, and Mayfield Independent, Fulton City. You see a lot of them practicing home visits that I hear from my members, and they talk about the positive aspects where the parents realize that it's a collaborative effort and a partnership, and they really truly care about their kids and are making an effort to reach out to the parents who can't make it to those parent-teacher conferences. So yeah, I think it's important, and they do make a difference.
You know, it always seemed to me, as far as the interest level, it seems to me it's almost reverse of what it should be, because middle school builds on elementary school, high schools build on middle school, and then you're out either in the job world or the higher education world. And I've ever understood, I would think as a parent you'd be more interested when your child was a junior or senior in high school, because now they're on the cusp of getting out. But that is the case. That's always been the case. One thing too, that Kentucky historically has shall we say, not been at the forefront of education in terms of valuing education. In years in Kentucky, it was almost this fierce pride that I can shoot a deer, I can skin a deer, I can trap beaver, and book learning is not that important. And there was almost this culture of, well, I'm ignorant, and my Paul's ignorant, and my kid's ignorant, and that's the way it is. You also see it on that comical bumper sticker, you know, my Julian Lincoln can beat up your honor student. It's almost this anti-intellectual, anti-education attitude. That obviously has changed in Kentucky, but do we still have a long way to go on that? In other words, I read a statistic somewhere, and you probably know this, that we are either #1 in the nation or close to it in lowest percentage of college graduates in the population.
I think there are a lot of stereotypes out there, just like you said. Stereotypes often play a role in the whole overlook of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. But there are a lot of great things happening and occurring as well, you know. Even like we talked about with 89 and 90, the Kentucky Education Reform Act. You know, it was a totally different set of reform, even at the time that, you know, educators were not really used to. And we saw a lot of teachers who were close to retirement go ahead and retire because, you know, they were not necessarily maybe adept or willing to jump on to
what do you see as the pluses and minuses of KERA? Because it was very controversial, if you recall.
Oh, absolutely. Some of the positives, I think it really forced educators in the Commonwealth to look, just like you said, because of all the stereotypes out there, how we were actually meeting the nature and needs of all students. All students, I said, you know, not just the students who were going to be college and career ready, but those students who, you know, were within special ed means, you know, getting them into classrooms and working with those students, and instead of just in a you know, environment all on its own, we looked at the least restrictive environment. Also, it was a chance to look how we were assessing students, and when you were talking about addressing stereotypes, you know, there's all the talk about students in Kentucky being able to properly read and write. So we saw the push for, you know, proper reading and writing content, and with portfolios as well, where students were, you know, assessed and not just within standardized testing of multiple choice, but also in writing with open response questions and on demand. Now, you know, we saw a need that portfolios be set at the side, but still a push for writing and new standards in the classroom. One of the negatives about, I think, KERA within itself was, and we hear this from many of our members, everything was focused on testing, you know. And, you know, I firmly believe personally, as an educator myself, that there's more to an overall child than just testing the child, you know, with content. It's about the whole child and every child. And so I think we're really looking with the new Senate Bill 1 coming through, making sure that students are assessed properly, but really preparing them for, you know, to move up the education ladder, as you said, elementary, middle, secondary, but prepare them for college and career ready, so that they're ready for, you know, we can try to push everyone to, you know, maybe they might not necessarily be ready for a 4-year university, but they will be able to come out of high school and be ready to go into a trade or tech school and be prepared for real world, which we want all students to be eventually.
I agree with you. Testing is looked upon as the magic bullet these days. But I also hear from various teachers, and I know quite a few teachers, and I hear from students that in some cases, some administrations, they really push these tests to the point that they teach to the test. And I wouldn't think that would be such a good thing to do if you're just teaching to a test. Do you hear that from teachers? They're being told to do that more or less?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. One of the things that the Kentucky Education Association did, KEA, we partnered with the Kentucky Department of Education, the Kentucky Association for School Administrators, you know, the Kentucky School Board Association, and we put out a TEL survey, Teaching Excellence, Learning and Leading survey, that actually went out to all educators last year, and it went to every classified employee in the Commonwealth. And they actually took the survey, and they were to target, you know, some of the positives, some of the negatives that they were facing in education. And it's funny that you said that. Accountability and over-testing and the push for testing in the school districts was very evident statistically wise. So one of the things that I receive many phone calls about is push from teachers from their principals or their superintendents about testing, and you know, many of them the fear to constantly perform, which, you know, there's a lot of research out there that shows that testing is important, but it's about the teaching that happens every day in the classroom. So what you will see, and you will hear from many teachers with the new standards rollout, that seems like all that we hear right now, standards, or superintendents pushing their principals for their teachers to be learning about the new standards, which are so crucial and important. But there's more than just the standards. There's, you know, meeting Johnny or Jane's problems that they have coming into the classroom every day. You know, it's funny because our students don't just show up and are ready to learn every day. And I think that's something that people forget unless you're in the classroom every day, and that's where we are as an association and the voice KEA. Our teachers have to be doctors. They have to be lawyers, they have to be psychiatrists, psychologists, because a student just doesn't show up every day and say, teach me, I'm ready to learn, and all this is going to filter in my brain, ready to take a test. You know, even as adults, we don't operate that way, so we can't expect a 9 or 10-year-old or a 13-year-old or a 16-year-old to expect to learn that way either. So I think that's a total different element that teachers face. But, you know, we hear from our members all the time, our students are just tested out. And I think that's a new reason why the Commissioner of Education, Dr. Terry Holliday, has worked with KEA and our other associations to say, you know, let's look at how we are assessing students. So, you know, as the largest union and association in Kentucky, we play a big part in that, and so does the KEA president, Sharon Oxendine, you know, serving on all those committees. And us having members that serve on those committees to have an active voice in what they're expected to do every day.
The testing that has been done in Kentucky, are these national tests? Are we comparing Kentucky students to other students, or just Kentucky students to each other?
That's a great question. That has been one of the problems and one of the flaws that we saw with KERA, Kentucky Education Reform Act, because we were really taking our students and we were comparing how they were performing academically to other students in the Commonwealth. Well, those standardized tests, you know, the CATS test and many others that were performed under KERA, that no longer was necessarily a form of reform that was preparing our students nationally and on a national scale. So what we're looking at now is our standards that are developed, and we're one of the first states that to have those type of standards and the rollout of those standards. But we really want to see a push. I think we see the Kentucky Department of Education pushing that to see where our students are performing among students at other states and on a national level, which I think is great. And I spoke about next generation learners to you earlier. You know, we see a push even for all students at the high school level in the Commonwealth to take the ACT now to really see where they are performing. And I attended McCracken County Board of Education meeting last night, and you know, they were talking about the ACT and just how their students were performing at a very high level among other you know, states and other counties in the Commonwealth. So we can actually see where some of that is being beneficial.
Well, I've always thought if you're going to have a test, it should be a national test, because we're all Americans here.
Absolutely.
You know, and again, if we're just doing Kentuckians, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Now, the ACT is in the northeastern states, don't they use the SAT more?
Absolutely. And you know, here in Kentucky, there's a lot of students with the high school level, and still a push for students to take the SAT too. But the ACT, being the American College Testing, has really picked up with our next generation learners, preparing them for career and college ready. So a push for all of our high school students to take the ACT. Whereas before, and even when I was in high school, it was just kind of an optional thing, and it was important out there to take the ACT, specifically your junior year, and I hope to do well on it, those that want to take. the test, but the SAT, some students took that as well, but the primary test that most students would take would be the ACT.
And there's such a difference. Our son's a freshman at Murray State, and going back to when I was in school, there was no preparation for the ACT. They would announce it's going to be given this Saturday, and you go and take it, and that was it.
That's right.
And you didn't take it more than once. You just took it, that was it, the one time, and that's what you did. And I've noticed that is quite a difference. There's this, you can take it repeatedly to bring your scores up. The other thing, too, that I have noticed, I'm amazed at how much more parent involvement that schools encourage now. We went through several meetings with the Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority. They've got a wonderful publication that shows precisely how much it costs. Not just tuition, but books, the whole thing, so you got an idea. And that is something you entirely.
Yeah, I had a mother call the KEA office. Actually, it's funny that you brought that up, just last week. And she was kind of in a panic because her daughter hadn't signed up for, I guess it's this coming Saturday's session, which, you know, they offer at the high school and they offer it here at West Kentucky Community and Tech College too. And like you said, the parent involvement, you know, she had found out from another parent whose daughter that was already signed up, and she wanted to make sure that her daughter got in there to take it to be eligible for Governor's Scholar.
Right.
You know, and so you could already see a parent concerned, wanting, so there's that competitive nature too with scholarship and making sure that their child has taken the test and scored appropriately. And you even see many parents taking their children to Sylvan Learning Center, some of the other educational offering and corporations that are around to help their children and to provide tutoring to ultimately have a high score on that to be eligible for some of the best scholarships available, as well as you know, state programs and federal programs too with scholarship money.
Well, you mentioned a Governor Scholars program. Our son was a Governor Scholar program, Governor Scholar, if that's the term for it. And I think that does show, as a lifelong Kentuckian, at least to me, that there is much more of an emphasis on that. There was no such thing when I was in high school. There's a Governor's School for the Arts, which is the same thing. And you go to these and you get scholarships, and that parents who are working class, like my wife and I, we really appreciate that. That, to me, that shows that we're emphasizing education more than we ever did.
Absolutely.
But having said that, we had to come from a long way. There was a survey done right after World War II by a number of groups in Kentucky to just examine the state of education in Kentucky. At the time, I believe we were #1 in illiteracy in the United States. In terms of spending on education, we used to say, thank God for Mississippi, they're lower than we are. We were 49th and now they're 50th. And Kentucky has moved up sort of into the middle, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that sort of started about the time that Judah and KERA was governor. That seems to be the real push. And education has become a major issue in this state. One of the things too, going back, let's talk about teacher education. Yeah. It's a lot different. When I was a senior at Murray State in 1971, not 1871, my students probably think it was, but 1971, to get a teaching certificate, a full high school certificate, you had to take one psychology class, which everybody did. You took 9 weeks of student teaching and 9 weeks of 2 or 3 education courses. That was it. And you were certified to teach in Kentucky. Now the salary I was offered that year, I didn't do it, I went to graduate school, but I was offered a teaching job in a county system in Western Kentucky, $5,300 a year was the salary.
Wow.
Yeah, wow is right. And I think when Judah and KERA was governor, salaries began to go up. But let's just get down and talk about money. If you are a young person and graduate from college with a teaching certificate, what is the range of salary you could reasonably expect teaching in a public school in Kentucky? Yeah,
you're going to really fall in, I'm thinking about our 17 school districts here in 1st District, somewhere around 32 to 35,000, depending on which school district it is. Obviously, the larger school districts in Western Kentucky, which you have McCracken County, and then you have Paducah Independent, they're going to, pay more. But teachers quickly realize, just as you were saying earlier, it's more of a rigorous process now, and really shaping those undergrad students to become highly qualified teachers.
Today, for example, if I were a freshman at Murray State today and decided I wanted to be a high school history teacher, what exactly would I have to do? I know more than one semester, obviously.
Absolutely.
So what would I have to do to get that certificate?
Well, they're going to have to go for, their bachelor degree, a 4-year, but it's not just going to be easy as a 4-year. They're going to get all their gen eds out of the way, but they're going to have to fall into the emphasis of the actual degree that they're going to teach. And so for history, as far as their emphasis of what it is, all of their social studies, history classes, but it's not just that specific. They have to fall in the category of, which I was quite surprised when I went in as well, humanities, music, because there may be a time and a place where that educator was in a specific school district or wherever they might be teaching, and they may not have a music teacher, so they have to be prepared with humanities and arts as well to teach that if the case need to be. But there's also a whole series of tests that they have to take as well, and those series of tests are called the praxis test. So the whole emphasis is also to have those university professors or instructors teaching as well the content that needs to be taught, that ultimately their students are going to be tested on in order to seek and get their certification from the Education Professional Standards Board. And in the state of Kentucky, those teachers, once they begin teaching, the education just doesn't stop there. They're put through a cycle of an internship, Kentucky Teacher Intern Program.
Right. Now, how does that work?
KEA, we play a big major part in that, and actually our KEA board member, Marie McMillan, she just finished working with about 100 educators, training them to get through that process. And Marie teaches in Marshall County at South Marshall Middle School. And also serves on the EPSB board. But that whole year, the intern teacher or the college graduate has to work with a mentor teacher, which will be a veteran teacher there in their school district, that really puts them through a cycle. And also they have to work with the university representative or professor from the university, where they have to meet all of the new teacher standards. And they have to, those new teacher standards, it's just like you had spoke about earlier. It's not just the emphasis of being social studies classes or a social studies teacher. They have to show how they meet technology standards and are able to, incorporate technology in their classrooms. So it's funny, sometimes I think about with my own parents when I graduated and became an elementary teacher, that I was just in the classroom having fun, teaching kids all day. No, it's about being well-rounded and making sure that technology comes forth in the classroom. Kinesthetic, physical education, arts, as well as the content that you're talking about. So you can't lose sight of whatever emphasis of the content that you're teaching.
I think technology, and this is something at my age of 61 I have seen and admittedly resisted. They have what they call smart classrooms, which that doesn't mean they're particularly intelligent people or a professor or a teacher. It's all these gizmos and all of these things, and that is really tough for those of us who are not inclined in that direction and have to deal with it, but that is such a part of it. Now, when I was in school, you got the audiovisual club to bring a projector in, a 16mm film,
the beat or whatever,
and you did that.
Projector.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, computers. When our son was in Mayfield Elementary, little kids in kindergarten, first grade, they're playing with computers, which just boggles the mind when you're my age. But that's another aspect of it, that the technology of it.
Yeah, I think the community would be surprised, when I walk in to help a member who may have a concern or issue, or if I'm just doing a building visit, I can walk in any classroom in Western Kentucky and you will see students as young as 5-6 years old, some of them holding iPads at their desk, and which has since taken place of laptops, which was pretty big when we brought those in the classroom. But like you said, you have teachers who have smart boards and they're providing instruction and touching a flat screen, and they may be showing a video. You have cameras and many different new incorporated technology that they're using. Skype. I may be walking in a classroom and a class and the teacher are talking to the governor in Frankfurt. In a history class, which is quite nice, or they may be working and talking with a NASA astronaut. So it's well equipped, and we've made really good strides and well strides when it comes to incorporating technology. Where when I was in the classroom, like you said, you might have had a teacher using a projector, an old-fashioned beep projector,
right,
or you might have had them playing a cassette tape,
right,
and a cassette player,
or
a
carousel of slides.
There
you could
go.
do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's interesting.
it's really their learning styles now, and of course, when well, certainly pre-computer age when I was in school, and my professors in college were all used chalk and a chalkboard, and that was a whole different style of teaching, and I wonder how kids could adjust to that, you know. And of course, my big question is, are they learning more with this technology? In other words, has technology really, we've had a quantum leap in technology, have we had a quantum leap in learning?
You know, I think it really does. I think it makes a big impact because, you know, I even look at my niece, you know, who's 6 years old. She knows how to work some of the technology and iPad and Facebook even, you know, better than I do. So I think students are more equipped and technology minded now, even coming into the classroom, because they're surrounded by all the technology at home. So they actually are technology learners. However, it still doesn't take place of really good teacher effective instruction with the teacher being highly qualified and bringing the knowledge that they have to the classroom and meeting the needs of the students, because there's nothing like that one-on-one
You're right.
teacher reaction and interaction with the student.
And that's the thing that concerns me as I am in the twilight of my career, is that you've got to watch and make sure you're not replacing the human touch with the technology. The technology to me would never be more than supplemental, that it's the one-on-one human being to human being. And because I've often thought, well, wow, some kid can say 20 years later, I had this great computer for a teacher.
Exactly.
That's absurd. And that's my big concern. And again, maybe it's because I'm an antediluvian, I'm an old person, but I'm thinking, well, now all this technology is great, but are they learning the basics? Reading, writing, and arithmetic, you know, not to oversimplify, but do they know the basics? Because if we have a power shortage or an ice storm and they don't have the technology anymore, could they go into a school and learn that way?
Absolutely, and I think that's important. I'm glad that you brought that up. You know, I was out here at West Kentucky Community and Tech College and doing a recruit for KEA student members, and I was surprised to have a former student come up and say, "Mr. Carter, how are you?" You know, and even that student replied, "You know, I'll never forget what we did in the classroom when I was with you, and you know, we did this learning game, or you did this experiment, or we did this hands-on lesson." You know, that let me know very quick they don't forget that one-on-one interaction and that profound difference that you can make in that student's life by, you know, bringing that light bulb on, whereas using a piece of technology and just giving it to the students is not going to cut it. There has to be a level of instruction that the teacher simplifies and brings about to the students, and the technology can only serve as an aid to build upon that instruction and serve as a different learning component, because all students learn differently, as we know. Some are more visual, where others are kinesthetic, auditory learners. So, you know, research just came out from the College of William and Mary, where one of their professors actually took all National Teachers of the Year from the state's respective Teacher of the Year programs, and they looked at those National Teachers of the Year and really examined, what did those teachers do different? Or what were ways of instruction that they taught different that made their students really learn? And the research showed that they changed their learning styles 4 to 7 times in one particular lesson. So I thought that was quite interesting in itself, that the teacher wasn't just relying on, you know, standing in front of the classroom and just speaking and lecturing. They were also incorporating technology. They had the students up, moving around. They had the students working in small groups. So it really has to be a component of all learning styles in order to have highly effective teaching in the classroom.
Well, getting back to you personally, when you came through old PCC back then, What made you decide to become a teacher, other than, of course, the huge salary and the prestige, right?
Oh yeah, so much prestige. I really wish
And
there
the big
was.
bucks.
Oh yeah.
Right.
But I think that at the time, Paducah Community College and now West Kentucky Community and Technical College, it served as a wonderful avenue for me. My dad worked at General Tire, which is no longer present or
What did
around.
you do down there?
He actually was just a flat out, he was a union member himself, but he was a tire worker and worked with beads and putting in within the tires.
A bead flipper.
That's right.
I know that job.
Worked midnights, you know, and I can remember all the way up to college and going to college and graduating from Marshall County in '98. He worked midnights, and now only appreciate even more the sacrifices he made, because he didn't go to a university or have a college degree, and Mom was a stay-at-home mom, but they knew enough that valued how important education was, and they could already see, you know, within themselves that in order for their sons to be successful, they were going to have a 4-year college degree. So my brother went on to Murray State for 4 years, but they thought it would be best to get a good start for me down at PCC at the time, and I didn't look back. Had great instructors, and even I'll say, like yourself, had you for a history class.
Well, that now, of course, pay students to say that.
You do, okay,
right,
okay.
Exactly.
But I had some wonderful professors that really pushed me, and it was a great start, and was very active here on campus, and you know, just transitioned. Had Donnie Rudolph for education classes, a veteran educator himself, and really provided a wonderful outlook. But I was always a people person. I know it's hard for you to believe, but
you're very shy.
Very shy, exactly. But you know, I had some profound educators that made a difference in my life, knowing that I had parents, you know, that had never attended a college or university. They saw aspects in myself and my brother.
So you and your brother were first generation college students?
Absolutely.
So I was in my family as well.
Yeah, and you know, Dad did whatever he could to put us through for college tuition, but got scholarships as well here at the college and at Murray State, and went on. I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I was also a singer, songwriter, and when I became Kentucky Science Teacher of the Year, I actually told everyone it was like the classroom was my stage every day to make a difference in students' lives.
Remember the movie Mr. Holland's Opus?
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
So
you know,
outstanding movie.
And my principal could come in my classroom any day, and I would be standing up, you know, on a desk, singing, teaching to the students. But whatever I had to do, and the students, you know, had very high test scores at the end of the year, but it was my students who made that difference, and I think that has to be the push. You know, the teacher can't.
Where did you teach elementary school?
Actually, my first year teaching, I taught in Paducah City. I taught at Cooper Whiteside Elementary, which is no longer an elementary school there. It houses, you know, choices for the alternative school there. But then I went on to teach in Graves County. For Graves County School District, and taught 4th grade, and then
Which school?
I taught at Simsonia Elementary, the old Simsonia,
right,
yes, which is no longer there. They have a new school
They do.
for Dennis Fisher, as well as Lisa Gamble, principal. A great school, has wonderful, wonderful students and parent involvement, great scores. And then they built the new Central Elementary, which is was a new school at the time behind the Graves County School Board. So I worked for the superintendent there, Brady Link, at the time, who's in Christian County now.
Sure is.
And worked for Stephanie Sullivan, a great school, When you walk in, the environment, they're the Central Knights, and all the teachers are Sir, Carter, or Lady, you know, Jones. Or it's just a real nice environment, and they really, you know, working in both a city independent school and a county school really was a great opportunity, and I even learned more about being a teacher than I had learned 4 years at a university about dealing with all kinds of demographics. And then bought a historic home, as you know, here in McCracken County on Lone Oak Road, and got a call from Principal Brian Harper and Tim Heller, superintendent at the time. I had become Kentucky Teacher of the Year winner, and said, you know, you think you may want to come on down? And there, you know, there's no school district any above recruiting teachers anywhere in the Commonwealth. And I said, yeah, I wouldn't mind being closer to home. Kind of got tired of the drive on 45 every day, but left and taught, you know, 4 years in McCracken County schools, and loved every minute of it. And as if that wasn't enough, I started getting interested in, you know, the union and how important it was to belong to your professional association. And, you know, I only compared it to, a doctor or a dentist needing to belong to the American Dental Association, or a heart surgeon belonging to the American Heart Association or endorsed by them. So became president of the McCracken County Education Association. And that's when I quickly learned that a school district had a responsibility, a very important responsibility, to make sure they were protected and the students. And then I saw where teachers were just kind of left out on the limb, and how important it was that they belonged, and I belonged to KEA. And I became very involved in the association and the union. And then I got interested in law school, and went to law school as well when the law school started down here in Paducah, and of course it folded in, and then transferred classes on to SIU and finished my doctorate, like you said earlier, and then went to work for KEA. So all the law school classes kind of went hand in hand, and the association experience in representing all the members in 1st District. And we have about over 1,700 members just in 1st District. And those members range from classified, your janitors, your cooks, your secretaries, to your teachers, we even see an increased membership among principals. And even some superintendents that belong to KEA, especially with some of the problems and issues that we've seen here in 1st District. Many principals have realized the importance of belonging to the Kentucky Education Association as well. And as it goes, we always represent educators first, but we do represent principals as well as superintendents if they have problems with their Board of Education, or there are problems and concerns between the principals and the superintendent.
Going back to your career in the classroom, what do you think makes a good elementary teacher? And I say that because I think back to my 1st grade, which was a very long time ago. Somehow that teacher, Rosemary Turnbow was her name, taught us how to read. Whereas at our level, we get students who already know how to read. I mean, to me, that's magic. What makes a good elementary? I don't know if I could do that. What makes a good elementary teacher, do you think?
I love one thing that you already have done. You've cited her first and last name. That shows that she made a profound impact on you.
Well, I still know how to sound out and break consonants. I never forget that. Yeah.
See, or diagram sentences.
Yeah.
But I think that's important. You know, I really truly think, I mean, as a teacher, as an educator, I think it's just a natural born instinct that you know that you want to affect the lives of others, or you want to make a difference in a child's life. As you said, I can remember Miss Mary Ford, who was my 4th grade teacher at Calvert City Elementary School. You know, she was there for me, and she talked about real life experiences. You know, she would teach whatever content, like if we were, you know, learning about a certain topic in social studies, Native Americans, you know, she would talk about Wycliffe and visiting. And at the time, I had never even been there with my family or visited, or how she went and visited a camp. And you know, she would bring it real life story within the classroom. I think some of the very best educators, whether it be elementary, middle, or secondary, they're able to take whatever topic or content that they are teaching, and they're able to relate it to the student's life, or able to bring it in and deliver it in a way where the students are able to learn it and the light bulb comes on. Just like you said, I can still remember her vividly, the things that she did within the classroom, whether it be classroom experiences or experiments that we were doing in science. That's what it's all about. You know, it's so much more than just saying, I want to be a teacher. You have to be able to relate to students and to bring information to them that they can learn and relate it to real life or their own lives. You know, a funny topic, I still remember Bill Cartwright, my first principal that I had at Cooper Whiteside. I came in and I was teaching a lesson in reading and literacy, and I was sharing Charlotte's Web, and I was reading, you know, the classic book, and he came in and he said, Mr. Carter, do you mind? And I said, no. And he came in and he said, how many students in here have ever been to a farm? And one student raised their hand. And, you know, that made me realize very quickly that the students that I was dealing with, many of them had never even visited a farm before, you know. And I think being able to really bring content on a level where students can understand it and relate it to real life. That makes all the difference. And you have to have a love of children or a love of working with students, whether they be teenagers or students getting ready to enter high school or students in college. You know, you have to be able to want to make a difference in someone's life, and when you've made that difference, you may not see the gains immediately, but just as I told you, when a student comes up to you and says, "I'll never forget what I did in your classroom," wow, you know you made a difference.
Oh, absolutely. Well, speaking of levels of students, as I said, our son's a freshman at Murray State. To me, the most difficult age to teach is middle school. I love my son dearly. He's a wonderful kid, but when he was in middle school, he was just sometimes insufferable. I know it's an awkward age, they say, but it is. He was great in little elementary school, middle school, and high school. What is it about middle school? And I've heard so many people who are in education say this is the toughest age to teach. Why are 6th and 7th and 8th graders so difficult to teach, do you think?
I think from hearing from our members and many of the educators that have taught middle school, and I've certainly worked with middle school students before as well, you know, in elementary you have such a foundational learning, as we've already spoke about on the program today, where teachers are really guiding the students and almost hand in hand. But then as soon as 5th grade comes, you know, that hand in hand component is cut off, and the students are taught and have to learn to be more independent. So as you said,
do they change classes in middle school?
They actually do, and one thing that we have tried to, you know, many of the school districts have tried to do is to start that transition of classes in 4th and 5th grade as well, to prepare them more for the transition in middle school and to be more independent. And, you know, unfortunately, sometimes the odds are against us, as you had said too, because of the whole psychology component and where students are changing and their life is changing and they don't necessarily know how to deal with that. But we've tried to prepare educators in undergrad and dealing more with those students. And unfortunately, bullying is a big issue as well. And I think the state of Kentucky and the Commonwealth have tried to come on and prepare our teachers more in dealing with students who are bullied, and to know that it's okay, and you know that all students are going to be different, and in order to be accepted, and it's okay to be different. So I think that's something that's very, very important, and many of our educators have tried to learn more professional development towards that in students. But I think it is a big component of being let go from the elementary level to being more independent and learning that you're going to have more responsibility, where you had more help and guidance at the elementary level.
I had a veteran middle school teacher in Mayfield years ago tell me, I was discussing this whole idea. I said, this is such a difficult age. And she said, we have to understand. She says, I have girls in my classes who have their bodies, they're adults, but they're playing with dolls. That the mental has not caught up with the physical. And I said, that would be confusing. And she says it is. And I think with boys it's the same thing. It's difficult, but my hat is really off to those who are teaching middle school. And one of my very best students was Trey Carvel, who was teaching at Mayfield Middle School, and I hear nothing but good reports about him. Trey is he's shy like you.
I'm sure. Yeah, he's one of our members. Actually, he's a building rep.
He is a terrific teacher. He is enthusiastic. He is fired up, and he, from what I hear, really gets these kids excited about social studies of all things. And my hat is off to teachers like that who can do that, because it's a tough age to deal with. And by the time they reach us, it's voluntary. You don't have to come here or not, but they're in school as well. And again, bullying, that has always been a problem in schools. And what exactly are we doing in Kentucky to reduce that?
Well, actually, one of the things is that, you know, it came about and was a big push was within law and statute, especially in dealing with students who were bullied, and unfortunately, and across the nation, the amount of suicides that were occurring and hitting close to home, you know. And we've had Dr. Bean, real well known at Murray State University, share a lot of professional development and content in with the educators as well. But we have school districts really opened up to national projects. We're dealing with bullying and different challenges to the students. And as I spoke about earlier, you know, middle school being that level, as you talked about, and students changing, to let them know exactly what's going on and that it's okay to be different. But at the same time, there's that level of support in training our counselors within the school districts and dealing with the students and providing necessarily the amount of counseling that needs to take place in schools. And we have our counselors now trying to work with more than just accountability and assessment, but actually going into the classrooms and working with students and providing social lessons and things to know how to deal with peer pressure, how to resist drugs, alcohol, and that's in middle and secondary level as well, and even elementary, having teachers, because unfortunately bullying just doesn't take place at middle school as one might believe, or the community. It happens as early as kindergarten, when students enter the classroom. We've worked with, really basically working with all teachers and preparing them what to look for. Because unfortunately bullying doesn't always take place in the classroom. It happens in the hallway, in bathrooms, in different settings, in the school and parking lot. So it's a way to keep a watchful eye out for all students to make sure that they are protected and the school is a safe, warm, welcoming environment where all students can learn in the classroom. Because unfortunately, if bullying is allowed to take place, it breaks the barrier down where students can't learn in the classroom. And the Kentucky Department of Education is aware of that. The Kentucky Education Association, we're aware of that. And it should be a place where all students feel welcome and are able to learn in a safe environment.
And again, there is also cyberbullying. I watched a program, Harry's Law, the other night, and that was a big issue about a cyberbullying. And again, that's technology. Do you all address that issue?
Absolutely, we do. As far as the Kentucky Education Association, we really work with our members to be very aware of Facebook.
Right, that's what this was.
And we even work with our teachers, and monitoring that and their own Facebook pages. I've worked with many instances where I've had to go out in the schools and provide training to tell teachers they don't need to accept students as friends on Facebook. And at the same time, that helps teachers realize that they are contracted to work during the school day, and any communication that would occur on Facebook would be after school hours, which could involve them in legal issues as well, and talking with students after, because the best form of communication with students is during the school day, and with communication with newsletters or letters or emails, where it can be documented, or phone calls as well. So, like you said, technology has been ever changing, so our educators are really facing issues of communication and with online communication that educators in the past never dealt with before.
Right.
Whether it be Facebook as a mean of communication or blogs. So it's important that our educators know that they just need to use school modes of communication and technology to communicate with students.
This issue, this particular episode involved a Facebook, and it was a suicide resulted from it. And again, now it's easy for me because I don't know how to do Facebook, and I'm not going to learn. Our son does, my wife does. I don't want to do that. But it's funny. I have students who they'll want me to be Facebooked, if that's the word, and I just simply ignore it because I don't know how to do that. But I think that's another issue in teaching too, is there's a line between the teacher and the student. You don't want to be a tyrant in the classroom, but at the same time, you don't want to be their friend, because they have their own friends. They want you to guide them and educate them. That must be tough for first-year teachers. I mean, where's the line between being a teacher and you don't want to cross it and be a friend?
Absolutely. I used to laugh. I talked about Donnie Rudolph out here at the college earlier. In his EDU beginning classes, Introduction to American Education, he used to say, "Don't ever smile until Christmas if you're a teacher." And I know he would say that jokingly sometimes too, but it is important that all of our educators going into or undergrads, especially those going into the teaching profession, and those that are teaching, you're not their friend, you are their teacher. At the same time, that doesn't mean that you don't need to perform or carry out any personal relationship, because some of the best educators or accomplished educators, they know each and every one of their students, and you really have to be an effective teacher. But you need to realize that, it's not that you're their best friend and you need to be talking to them after school hours, because it could land you in hot water, especially, dealing with them on these modes or means of communication that we're talking in, which is social networking.
Right.
There are some schools in our school districts that have a Facebook page, but it's a school Facebook page, for the specific school. Now that would be a mode that would be okay to communicate for parents and students and teachers to speak on. But if it's your personal Facebook page, as we say among the association, and we give smart tips, social networking tips for educators, I would not accept any student or any student that was a minor or under 18 years of age on my Facebook page. And unfortunately, we have many teachers who accept those students as friends, which we've had documented cases in the past, and I've dealt with some of those cases where parents have printed off those Facebook pages and brought those in to the school district, either to the superintendent or the principal or the site-based council, and then the teacher has to go in, and the parent is wondering why the educator is contacting their child after school hours and talking to them, which is kind of like being in a classroom, as I've told teachers, with 4 walls and no windows, and talking with the student. So it's just smart tips that we try to inform educators to avoid, where they can necessarily teach the content that they need to teach and carry on being a successful teacher.
And I think it's too, if you're teaching a high school, my wife started teaching when she was 23.
Absolutely.
Well, she's only 5 years older.
Yeah, I was 21, I
than
think.
Seniors. So you're very close to their age. Now, I'm not going to reveal her age now, but she's not 23 anymore.
She'll get you.
She will. So, and I think that is that's difficult, because you're not that far removed from them age-wise.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, especially dealing with middle school and secondary teachers, I hear a lot of members talk, and they'll call up, they may have a student that's absolutely in love with them, or just puts them on a pedestal. So you really have to be careful, and they have to make sure that they take precaution to let the students know that they are their teacher, they're not their friend, and they're there to better them in learning to become more academically inclined and to go on to college. So teachers have more of a responsibility to know that they're there to educate the child, especially during the school hours. And if they have extracurricular, I deal with our coaches all the time, and our cheerleading sponsors, to know that they're there to help them with those extracurricular activities, but it doesn't go anything beyond what the extracurricular activities are, and they have to take extreme precaution in making sure that any communication that they have with those students and parents, that it's in written form and not among text messages, or having the student's cell phone number to text message them, and any communication that they have is through the school and on schools, on-site premises, and through their technology, and not their personal technology.
We're out of time.
Wow.
I enjoyed this very much.
Absolutely.
You'll come back in and we'll talk about this some more, because it's an issue that's pretty important to all of us.
And we've got great schools here in First District in Western Kentucky, and many of our teachers that you've had in the past here at the college, and they're doing great things in the classroom. The community needs to know that. We have some great students as well.
That's always nice to hear. My guest today was Craig Carter, UniServ Director of KEA in Paducah. I'm Barry Craig. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.